AITA for asking my neighbor to stop feeding stray cats because they're ruining my garden? Have you ever woken up to find your entire yard destroyed? Your dog too scared to go outside, and a dozen stray cats lounging around like they're in some feline paradise? That was my reality. And let me tell you, it wasn't exactly the peaceful suburban life I'd imagined. It all started a few months ago when my neighbor, Linda, decided she was going to be the neighborhood's Mother Teresa of stray cats. At first, it seemed harmless. One or two cats on her porch, a bowl of food here and there, fine. But then the trickle of cats turned into a flood. By month 2, it felt like every stray cat within a 10-mile radius was having a reunion on our street. My backyard used to be my sanctuary. I'd spent years building it up. A small vegetable garden, neatly trimmed flower beds, and even a little fountain that Max, my golden retriever, loved to drink from. But thanks to Linda's cat army, it became a battlefield. The cats dug up my vegetable patch, turned my flower beds into their personal litter box, and knocked over planters like they were bowling pins. The smell hit me first. If you've never experienced the unholy stench of a dozen cats marking their territory in your garden, consider yourself blessed. Then came the noise. Constant yowling, especially at night. I'd lie in bed listening to what sounded like a feline soap opera happening just outside my window. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking it might blow over. But one morning, I walked outside to find Max cowering in a corner of the yard, while 3 cats stared him down like they were in some kind of gang. That was it. I decided to confront Linda. "Hey Linda," I started, trying to keep my tone friendly. "I noticed you've been feeding the cats. That's really nice of you, but they've been spending a lot of time in my yard, and it's causing some problems." She looked at me like I just insulted her entire family. "They're hungry," she said, her voice dripping with judgment. "Someone has to take care of them." "I get that," I said, forcing a smile. "But they've been digging up my garden, and my dog's really scared of them. Maybe you could feed them a little further from the property line?" Linda crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. "What do you expect me to do? Let them starve?" I tried to explain that I wasn't asking her to stop entirely, just to consider the impact it was having on my property. But she wasn't having it. "They're living creatures," she said, her voice rising. "If you cared about animals, you wouldn't complain." I left the conversation feeling like the villain in some Disney movie. But my sympathy for the cats quickly evaporated when I came home later that week to find my garden completely destroyed. The cats had outdone themselves this time. My fountain was knocked over, my tomatoes were shredded, and there was cat poop everywhere. Max refused to even step outside. I tried everything. Motion-activated sprinklers? The cats figured out how to dodge them. Citrus peels and repellents? They just ignored them. By this point, I was desperate. I went back to Linda's house, hoping we could find a solution together. "Linda," I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. "The cats destroyed my garden again. I really need your help with this." She sighed like I was asking her to do something unreasonable. "I already told you, it's not their fault. They're just trying to survive." "But it's my yard," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "Can't we at least come up with a plan to keep them out of my property?" Linda shook her head. "Maybe if you put up a higher fence or something, but I'm not going to stop feeding them." I walked back to my house, feeling defeated. Linda had made it clear she wasn't going to compromise, and meanwhile, her feline army continued to take over. That night, as I was cleaning up the mess in my garden for what felt like the 100th time, Max started barking like crazy. I rushed outside to find 2 cats perched on top of my trash cans, their tails flicking as they stared down at Max like he was the intruder. One of them leapt off the can, knocked it over, and sent garbage spilling everywhere. The other didn't even flinch, just kept glaring at Max until I shooed them away. It was like they knew I couldn't touch them. The next morning, I woke up to find paw prints all over my car, and a shredded garbage bag scattered across the driveway. As I was cleaning it up, I noticed Linda watching me from her porch. She didn't say anything, but I could feel her judgment radiating across the street. The breaking point came later that week. I was in my kitchen, trying to focus on work, when I heard the unmistakable sound of yowling. I looked out the window to see 3 cats fighting on my patio table. One of them knocked over a planter, and the other 2 bolted into my vegetable patch, trampling what was left of my carrots. That was it. I grabbed my phone and texted Linda, "We need to talk. This is getting out of control." To my surprise, she actually agreed to meet. I walked over to her house, trying to stay calm, but the second I mentioned the damage, she cut me off. "You know," she said, crossing her arms, "I've been talking to some of the neighbors, and they all agree you're overreacting." I blinked. "Overreacting? Linda, your cats destroyed my garden. My dog is terrified to go outside. How is that overreacting?" "They're not my cats," she snapped. "I'm just helping them." "Then help them somewhere else," I shot back, louder than I meant to. "Why should my property have to suffer because you've decided to play hero?" Linda gasped like I just insulted her entire lineage. "You really don't care about animals, do you?" she said, her voice dripping with contempt. That comment hit harder than I expected. I love animals. I grew up with cats, for crying out loud. But this wasn't about not caring. It was about boundaries. Before I could respond, Linda went on. "Maybe if you weren't so selfish, you'd understand what it means to actually make a difference." Selfish. That word stuck with me for the rest of the day. I started questioning myself. Was I being unreasonable? Was I the bad guy for not wanting my property destroyed? But then something happened that erased any doubt. That night, I woke up to the sound of Max barking furiously. I ran outside to find him cornered on the patio, his tail tucked between his legs as 3 cats hissed and swiped at him. My heart sank. Max was the gentlest dog I'd ever had, and seeing him so scared lit a fire in me. I chased the cats away and spent the rest of the night comforting Max, who wouldn't stop shaking. The next morning, I made my decision. I was done trying to play nice. I called animal control. Calling animal control felt like a last resort, but I didn't see any other way. I wasn't trying to hurt the cats. I just wanted some peace. The woman on the phone was sympathetic and explained they could set up humane traps to relocate the strays to a shelter. It felt like the only solution, so I agreed. When I got home that evening, I found Linda waiting for me on my front lawn, arms crossed and a storm brewing in her eyes. "You called animal control?" she accused, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I froze. How did she even find out? "I had to," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "Linda, this has gone too far. Max is terrified, my garden is ruined, and I can't live like this anymore." "They're just cats," she yelled, throwing her hands in the air. "You're acting like there's some kind of plague. All they want is food and shelter, and you're trying to rip that away from them." "It's not about the cats," I argued. "It's about boundaries. Your decision to feed them is affecting my life in ways that aren't fair. I've tried to talk to you, I've tried everything else, but you won't listen." She didn't seem to hear a word I said. "Do you even know what happens to strays in shelters? Most of them don't make it out alive. You might as well have put them down yourself." Her words hit like a punch to the gut. I didn't want that. I wasn't trying to hurt the cats. I just wanted my home back. But Linda's glare made it clear she saw me as the villain. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the argument in my head, questioning if I'd made the right call. But the next morning, something happened that changed everything. I stepped outside to find one of the humane traps animal control had set up overnight. Inside was a scrappy-looking black and white cat, meowing pitifully. As I crouched down to take a closer look, I noticed something strange. A collar. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a stray, it was someone's pet. I immediately called animal control to let them know, and they assured me they'd check for a microchip before doing anything else. But the thought of someone's beloved pet being mistaken for a stray shook me. Was this really the right solution? Before I could dwell on it too much, Linda stormed over, her face flushed with anger. "You had no right to do this," she said, pointing at the trap. "I didn't know it would catch a pet," I said, my voice faltering. "But Linda, what else was I supposed to do? You wouldn't listen to me." "This is on you," she spat. "If anything happens to that cat, it's your fault." The rest of the day was a blur. Animal control confirmed the cat had a chip and was safely returned to its owner. But the incident left a bad taste in my mouth. I started to wonder if I'd gone too far. Now, the entire neighborhood seems divided. Some people are on Linda's side, calling me heartless for involving animal control. Others have quietly thanked me for taking action, admitting they've had similar problems with the cats. I'm stuck in the middle, feeling like no matter what I do, I'm the bad guy. I just wanted to protect my home, my dog, and my peace of mind. But now I'm questioning if I handled this the right way. So, Reddit, AITA for asking my neighbor to stop feeding the stray cats and calling animal control when she wouldn't? Or am I the villain Linda thinks I am?